Welcome back to the third episode of the podcast. I really hope you enjoyed the last two, and I feel like now we're getting more into the meaty, educational, social media, personal branding discussions. Now we've got all the introductions out of the way. So you would have seen by the title that today we're going to talk about 3 key things that we can learn from Aimee, the founder of Odd Muse, and her personal branding strategy, and why it has worked so well. I think every single personal branding strategist talks about Aimee, and there's a very good reason for it, but don't worry, I am definitely not going to be regurgitating the same points that you've probably seen a lot. I've got 3 things that I don't think a lot of people have picked up on enough, and to me, I look at it and I think these are such key reasons that her personal brand has absolutely blown up. So I am literally going to get straight into it, straight into the gossip. So the first reason that I just do not think is mentioned enough is her positioning. Now, to put it simply, and this might be a bit of a controversial opinion, it might be a bit harsh to say, but your personal brand isn't just sharing your story. You can't just share your story and say that that is your personal brand. It's much deeper than that, and it comes down a lot of it to positioning. Like I said, not enough people have mentioned this with Aimee. I feel like there's some really key points as to how she's positioned herself and how it is just done incredible for her personal brand, and then obviously as a byproduct, Odd Muse. So like I said, it's not just about sharing your story. Sorry, not sorry, you have to be strategic about how you tell your story. Especially if you're a kind of founder, you want your personal brand to drive revenues, opportunities for your business, you need to think about how you're positioning your personal brand. And that is exactly what Aimee from Odd Muse has done. I look at it and I think she has been so cleverly strategic with her personal brand. Not an obvious way where we feel like everything she's serving us is very curated and polished, but she's just, you can tell that she's really thought about what she is sharing when it comes to her personal brand and the effect that is going to have. So, for example, a big part of her story that she reiterates is that she was working at ASOS and then she left ASOS to start Odd Muse. And when we're thinking about it, why is that strategic? Because I think that is such a key part of her story and why it's done so well, is because if you think of her target audience, right, I would probably say I am her target audience. I'm 25, girls younger than me. They're the kind of girls that are gonna shop at ASOS, they're gonna shop at those kind of brands, and the fact that she's kind of sharing her story about her time working at ASOS, for her target audience, that adds a lot of credibility for them, right? Because that's the kind of fashion that they consume, the fact that she's been part of that company. Ultimately, by sharing that she worked at ASOS, and like I said, her target audience loving ASOS, purchasing from ASOS, it builds a connection point, right? She's immediately connecting with her target audience because they love ASOS, she worked there. It's a connection point for people to start, building that trust and credibility with her as a founder, and her expertise as well, right? To say that she's worked at such a big fashion brand, it adds a ton of credibility to her story, because that she's been in such a big company, she's seen how it works, she's worked in fashion. So her sharing her story around ASOS and when she left, it's a connection point, but it's also a massive credibility point for her, and that's why it's so clever and so good from a strategic point of view that she has shared that for those different reasons. But obviously the whole point of this podcast is I want you to walk away listening to these lessons and being able to implement this for your own personal brand. So when it comes to your own positioning, the big note that you have to take from Aimee from Odd Muse is that I've said it a million times in this segment, but be strategic about how you share your story, because positioning right, when it is done right, it's meant to show why you're different to your competitors, why you stand out, and it's meant to build your credibility. So when you're looking at your own story, what I love to advise people is look for credibility points, right? So for an example, for me, a credibility point as to why I can speak about personal branding is because I've built my own, and it's helped me start a business. I generate inbound inquiries. So do you see how that part of my story, it builds credibility for me to talk about personal branding? You need to sit down and look for credibility points in your story that almost kind of give you a right to talk about what you're an expert in, if that makes sense. You need to also look at the things that are going to make you stand out. So look at your competitors. Some of them might have a personal brand, some might not. Immediately if you start building yours, you're ahead of the people that don't. But look at the founders who are building a personal brand from your competitor brands. Look at what they're talking about and try and identify is there something about me that's going to make me different to the rest of these people? It's going to help me stand out, amongst all of them, and it's going to help people gravitate towards me. I'd also say a big part of positioning is try and share stories that show you achieving what your target audience would love to achieve. So again, for me, a big part of how I would transfer that to myself is that I can generate inbound inquiries through my personal brand, and that's what my ideal client would love to do but they can't do. So I'm showing how I am achieving the dream or the desire that my target audience want, but I'm using it's from my story. So the overriding thing here is positioning, but in positioning, share your story strategically, please. And the second point is advocacy. Now, I find this really interesting that I haven't seen anyone else talk about this, I might be wrong, but I haven't seen anyone talk about this in this way. And it's how Odd Muse do advocacy differently. So when we think about advocacy in terms of social media strategies and on social media, a lot of our minds will go to, well, obviously, how can we demonstrate that customers are using the product time and time again? So, it might be referral codes, it might be that we're showing customers, repurchasing time and time again, all those different things. But the different thing that Odd Muse has done, and why this still relates to personal branding in Aimee, is because she is the advocate. You look at Odd Muse's socials, and you will see her in her products on the Odd Muse page, on her personal page, all the time. She wears them all the time, right? Like I said, and you can even see it on photo shoot images on their Instagram. She's in so many of them, and as a founder of the business, you are in the best position to be an advocate for your business. But I think it's something that so many businesses, so many founders forget to do. And I actually think that is one of the most powerful things Odd Muse has done, right? Because if you're not showing up in your personal brand as a founder, advocating for your products, obviously in Aimee's case it's wearing her products all the time, then why on earth should people buy it? Why would they trust it, right? Because if they can't see you using that product or service all the time, it kind of creates a little bit of well, they've set up this business for this product and service, but why are they not using it? Is there something wrong with it? If your customers and clients can see you, like Aimee does, wearing it, using it all the time, then it builds that kind of level of trust of oh well, the founder's using it all the time, so there must, it kind of what's the word, puts proof behind when businesses say their product is great, right? It literally puts the proof in the pudding as to why your product or service is great. How are you going to do this as for your own business? And for a product business, it's kind of, if I'm honest, do what Aimee does, right? Wear your product, use your product in your own personal brand. Of course, your products are all going to be on your company socials, but in your personal brand, and it doesn't have to be a way of oh, look what I'm wearing. Quite a lot of Aimee's stuff, you can see she's wearing Odd Muse, but she doesn't actually necessarily say she is, but we know she is. We know she's wearing the products. So as a founder, you don't have to do like loads of posts, you know, being like, oh, I'm wearing or using this. Just show you kind of like using your product or service in your everyday life. Like Aimee does, just wearing the products, wearing the clothes to work, to do her normal day. Translate that for yourself. So I don't know, say for example, you owned a sensitive skincare brand, right? I would say you've got these products. I know this is not going to be exact, but say you've got the whole skincare range and then you've got like moisturisers, hand moisturisers, that kind of thing. You know what I would do? I would do like morning routine vlogs kind of thing where you're doing your skincare. I would just place your products in the background of some videos. You don't necessarily need to talk about them, but they're there in the background. For the hand, like for any moisturisers, you could literally show them on your desk. So, you know, you could be doing TikToks, videos, posts about business stuff, but you've got your moisturiser on your desk showing that, you know, you use it every day. It's stuff like that. You want to be your own advocate. And I think as business owners, we love to say our business is the best out there and it's the best thing since sliced bread and we're all obsessed with our businesses. But do we actually communicate that online? The third and final point, I kind of want like some podcast episodes to be long, some like short and concise. That's a better way to say it. I feel like educational ones like this are better short and concise, so you don't feel overwhelmed with all of this information. But the last point is honesty and vulnerability. Now, I know a lot of people talk about this, but I'm going to talk about it in a different way, okay? Because I mean, this is such a big topic that you could talk about it for ages on its own. I think I could talk about this for like half an hour on its own. I'm not going to, don't worry. But I am a big believer that you need to consider if it feels natural to you, right? You might be someone who genuinely is like genuinely just not a very, not honest, that's the wrong word, but you don't like opening up about like feelings. You like to process things internally, okay? And if you are like that, then, you know, I would actually advise you to strongly consider like the level of vulnerability, because if then all of a sudden you just start being like extremely vulnerable and like bare your heart and soul, it's going to seem disingenuous. So in that case, I don't think you need to go all in with vulnerability. That's probably going to be a controversial thing to say, but it is, I mean, it's called a personal brand for a reason, isn't it? And I also feel like no one, again, I haven't seen anyone talk about this point, but I think you need to consider your target audience. Like, not to kind of take it too much back to strategy, but I mean, you need a strategic approach, as we've already like considered. But say, for example, you know, let's take Aimee's target audience. Aimee's target audience, girls in their 20s, probably make up a big proportion of it. And as a girl in their 20s, I love seeing founders being open and vulnerable and honest. I love that. However, if your target audience is like 60-year-old males, it's not the generation that they lived in. It's a different generation. So would they receive that vulnerability in the same way? I don't think they would, because not to get too political, but they grew up in a different generation, right, where that didn't really happen. So would they respond to it the same way? I don't think so. So in that scenario, again, I think you need to consider like how vulnerable you want to be, because at the end of the day, if your personal brand is to attract leads and customers, you do need to think about how your target audience is going to receive your personal brand and what you're putting out through your personal brand, okay? Those caveats aside, obviously, as a personal brand manager, I believe so much in the power of being vulnerable. And I think Aimee has done it in such a clever way that actually when I was studying it the other day, I was looking at it, I was like, I don't think I've seen another example of this before. So let me explain. There was a TikTok, and I think I mentioned this in the last podcast episode, where she was basically kind of getting emotional and she was being very honest about how she was struggling with the scale of the business, like how she was struggling with how big it was getting and like how just seemingly out of control for her because she never envisioned it to be this big. It was so clever because she shared that struggle, right? But when you think about that struggle in relation to her target audience, not many of her target audience are going to be able to relate to that struggle, right? Like, not, you know, I mean, I would say probably under 1%. I mean, even that's probably ambitious. Like, of her target audience will be able to relate to what she has said there. That she is, like she was saying in it, that, you know, money, like, numbers are just getting out of hand. She's kind of being unrelatable, but not in a way where you're like it's kind of, what's the word? Like, it turns you off, like, her as a founder and odd Muse. But the clever thing about being unrelatable is that she kind of like creates this aspirational feeling around her as well, because a lot of girls, you know, in their 20s who she's probably appealing to have big dreams as well, whether it's to go fashion brand or build their own business. Like, they probably have a lot of big dreams themselves. So by her kind of saying that her dream has kind of got out of control almost, that is something that the target audience want, right? But they don't have. So she's being relatable, but she isn't. So it has this like amazing effect of like, you relate to her and you build a connection with her and you trust her more because you can see her being human, you can see her sharing a struggle, but it also kind of makes you put her on a little bit of a pedestal, and it has that aspirational, like I said, feeling around it, because you think, like, again, if you're her target audience and you have these big dreams, you're a fashion lover, you look at her and you go, oh my god, I'd love to have a business that big, I'd love to have a fashion brand that big, and you kind of like aspire to be her. Do you get where I'm coming from? I hope I've explained that well, because in my head I saw it and I was like, that is ingenious. That is ingenious. And I think especially for her as well, like the way she ties everything in, because again, from that aspirational piece, you look at her and you're like, I want to be like her. And then I'll be dragging the other piece of like, you want to be like her and she's wearing her odd Muse clothes all the time. What clothes are you going to wear? Like, you want to be like her, so you want to dress like her, but she's dressing in odd Muse, so you want to dress in odd Muse. Like, there's so many subtleties to what she puts out there that just works so incredibly well. Like I said, I do not think enough people are talking about these nuances of her personal brand. I really, really hope you found that helpful. If you've got any questions from what I've said, please leave a comment, DM me, get in touch with me, and I'm more than happy to like elaborate, discuss more. And yeah, the next episode, just to give you a teaser, is going to be all around how to create shareable content, because we all know shareable content is so big on social media right now. So I'm going to be giving you the lowdown of how to create it in the first place. So stay tuned for that one. But I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, evening, afternoon, whatever time you're watching this, and thank you.